First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai Ba'Hashem Rakakwadash. Yahweh is to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai is to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Ba'Hashem means in the name. Rakah means spirit, and Kodash means holy. And that's all in the Paleo Hebrew. Also, want to give double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Today's video, I wanted to go into how the Sabbath is based on the new moon. Okay, not Saturday, Friday, or Sunday, as they believe nowadays. No, the Sabbath starts on the new moon. So, this video is inspired by the Apostle Tahar's video here. His second channel, what is this, 666 Mark II, GMS Truth, where he said, where did God say the Sabbath was Saturday? Right, and when you go into that statement, you'll find that nowhere in the scriptures does it say that the Sabbath is on Saturday. Right, because what the people believe the Sabbath day is today is a complete lie. Right, and they're basing it on some false calendar system. Right, when you go into when the Sabbath is, they base it, right, is the Sabbath on Saturday or Sunday? The Sabbath is on Saturday according to the Bible. However, many Christians observe Sunday as a day of worship. When is the Sabbath? Let me search it up this way. Why is the Sabbath on Saturday? The Sabbath is considered to be on Saturday because according to the Bible, God rested on the seventh day of creation, which is traditionally understood as Saturday, making it as a day of rest and sanctity in Judaism and some Christian denominations. This is based on the story in Genesis where God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. Now, the point why they're wrong in all this is because Sunday does not mark the beginning of the week, right? What they're going off right there is a calendar system. And the biggest question is hey, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, there was no calendar system. There was no Gregorian, no Saturday, no Monday, no Tuesday. So how were they marking the Sabbaths? That's the big question. You ask that to a so-called Jewish person, a Christian, you would leave them stumped, right? Because they don't go that deep. They don't analyze what they actually believe in, right? So let's see, when was the Gregorian calendar made? 1582. And it comes from the Julian calendar. When was the Julian calendar made? 45 BCE. Right, and we know that the Israelites were way before BCE, 46 BCE. Right, I believe the Exodus happened in 1449 or 1448 BC. Right, so 1,400 years before this calendar, what were they going off of? And the answer is the moon. When you go into what the Sabbath is based on, the Sabbath is based on the new moon. Let's get that in Isaiah chapter 66. I'm going to just read these straight, showing you how many times it goes into this point. Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 20 says, and it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. Right, so right there shows you that the new moon and the Sabbath are synonymous. Right, the new moon marks the beginning, okay, of the month, and that marks the first Sabbath. Okay, and 7 days after that is when you get the second Sabbath, right? That's why the new moon marks the new month, okay? And 7 days, the new month marks the first day, and 7 days after that is when you get the seventh day, the next Sabbath. Okay, it's very simple. It says, thus saith Yahweh, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened. And in the day of the new moon it shall be open. Right, synonymous. It says, saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn and the Sabbath? That we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. Right, so they're asking so they can pretty much get back to work. Right, when is the new moon going to be gone? And the Sabbath. Synonymous. Right, because you're not supposed to be doing any work, right, any selling, buying during the Sabbath. You're supposed to be just chilling. It says, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days. Okay, all synonymous. So simply explaining it, the new moon marks the Sabbath, and you will have the Sabbath be on that day until the next new moon appears. Right? So this, for example, the last 3 weeks or so, the Sabbath was on Tuesday evening to Wednesday evening. Now that a new moon is coming, Thursday evening to Friday evening, this will mark the next new Sabbath for the remainder of that month until the next new moon comes, where it changes to maybe Friday to Saturday or Saturday to Sunday. Right? You have to analyze. Okay, and that's how they were tracking it in ancient days. Okay, not with this bullshit Julian Gregorian calendar. Which, when you go into their explanation, right, let's make a new tab and just bring out how incorrect these people are. So simply, let's start with when was the Sabbath, or when is the Sabbath? The Sabbath traditionally begins at sundown Friday evening and ends on nightfall on Saturday. The exact time depends on your location, as it is based on the time of the sunset. Would you like to know the specific time for your location? No. Let's say, how did they come to this conclusion? It says the reason behind the specific timing from sundown to sundown comes from the Jewish tradition, which bases its days on the lunar cycle, rather than the modern 24-hour cycle. In Judaism, a day is traditionally considered to begin at sunset as opposed to midnight. That's true. This is based on the creation story in Genesis, where there is evening and there is morning the first day. The pattern of evening to morning is followed in Jewish observance of the Sabbath, beginning on sundown on Friday evening and ending at sundown on Saturday. Now, this is when you start pretty much bringing out the truth. What marks the beginning of the month? The beginning of the month in many ancient traditions, including Judaism, was marked by the signing of the new moon in the Hebrew calendar. The start of each month is determined by the first visible crescent of the moon after a new moon phase. This practice is based on biblical references and is still observed today in some Jewish communities. Right? And they're on point with that. It says in ancient times this would involve witnesses seeing the new moon and reporting it to religious authorities. Once confirmed, the start of the new month, Rosh Chodesh, would be declared. The process was important for keeping track of religious festivals, holidays, and the timing of the Sabbath. And that's where they're completely lying. Right? It's because nowadays, the new month is not associated at all with the Sabbath. Right? And I'm going to show you that right now. It says, so wouldn't the new moon mark the beginning? Mark the day of the Sabbath. There you go. That's an interesting question. The new moon itself doesn't mark the Sabbath, but it does play an important role in the Jewish calendar and can affect the timing of certain holidays. It says, the Sabbath is observed every seventh day of the week from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, regardless of the lunar phase. So that right there just tells you the truth. That no matter what lunar phase is going on, the Sabbath is always going to be from Friday to Saturday, which completely contradicts what we just read up here, that the month, is used to keep track of the timing of the Sabbath. So it says, it is a fixed weekly observance, right? Which that right there you should know it's off, because first thing I searched up on one of my other, I was researching, is Saturday one year the same day as next year? It says not always. If this year is not a leap year, then the same day next year will be 1 weekday later. If this year is a leap year, then it will be 2 weekdays later. If today is Saturday, February 24th, 2024, then next year, 25, February 24th falls on a Monday. If today were Saturday, February 24th, 2025, then in 2026, February 24th would be on a Tuesday. And that right there shows you the false, why the calendar is flawed. Right? Because the same day today is not the same day next year. Right? It changes. So how do you think that fixing your days based on the calendar system, you're correctly going to be getting, the days of the Lord, the correct days of the month? You have to be completely delusional. But we live in a society where, truth is not pushed. Right? All these are so-called Jewish people, with their whole Judaism, all that is lies. They are not the true Hebrew Israelites. In fact, they are the true Hebrew Edomites. Right? They are imposters and fit the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 36 and verse 5. So, it says it is a fixed weekly observance based on the biblical account of creation. So the Sabbath follows a weekly cycle and is not directly tied to the phases of the new moon. However, the new moon marks the beginning of a new month. And that is all you have to know. Okay, just think about it. If the new month is based on the new moon, then that means that 7 days after that new moon would be the seventh day, which would mark the Sabbath. Okay, it's very simple. While the new moon doesn't determine when the Sabbath falls, it does influence the timing of religious observances. For example, the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, occurs on the first day of the seventh month on the Hebrew calendar, which is always around a new moon. Similarly, certain festivals like Passover and Sukkah also have their dates influenced by the moon cycle. So to sum it up, the new moon is important for marking the start of a new month, but the Sabbath is set weekly and doesn't directly correlate to the lunar cycle. And that shows you how these so-called rabbis, they've changed it. They've changed, the holy day, and ultimately have changed what the scriptures actually say. So, one more thing I want to bring out is I was asking ChatGPT, these same things, and I asked it, this is what I said. I gave her the truth. The Bible points to that the new moon and Sabbath are synonymous, showing that the new moon is the beginning day of the Sabbath and will be the day until the next new moon when it changes. It says you bring up a fascinating perspective that some people find in the Bible when they see a connection between the new moon and the Sabbath. While traditionally the Sabbath is observed every seventh day, regardless of the lunar cycle, there are a few passages in the Bible that mention both the new moon and the Sabbath together, which can give the impression that they might be linked in some way. They are linked. It says, and it shall come to pass from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, that shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. This verse mentions both the new moon and the Sabbath in parallel structure, which some interpret as indicating that the new moon and the Sabbath are related in a way that calls for observance from one to another. Another scripture. It says, similarly in Numbers 28, 9 and 10, same thing. And on the Sabbath day, 2 lambs of the first year without spot, and 2/10 deals of flour for a meat offering, mingled with oil and the drink offering thereof. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. This passage links regular offerings for the Sabbath and new moon, but again, it does not explicitly say that the new moon is the Sabbath. And that's where you have to extrapolate, right? You have to put the two together, use your brain. Let's ask it one more thing. It says, while there are biblical references where both the new moon and the Sabbath are mentioned together, the more common traditional interpretation is that the Sabbath remains fixed every seventh day. However, you're highlighting a view held by certain groups that interpret these scriptures as suggesting a connection where the new moon could indeed mark the beginning of the Sabbath for that lunar cycle. With it changing on the next new moon, it's an interesting perspective that has a historical precedent and some scriptural backing for those who view the two as being linked. Right, so ChatGPT is saying that our perspective has historical, facts, precedent, and scriptural backing. So which one are you going to go with? The scriptures or the common tradition? So, scriptures tell us that we're not supposed to go after the traditions of man. Right, Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8, it says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Hamashiach. Right? So, hey, beware that people throw you off, right, with all these worldly philosophy, these worldly ways, which are not of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai. Right? And that's what we're seeing today on a massive scale. Let's see what it says in the NLT. Don't let anyone capture you with empty philosophies and high-sounding nonsense that come from human thinking and from the spiritual powers of this world, rather from Hamashiach. Right? So, scriptures don't lie. And we're seeing that, hey, here in Babylon the Great, on the greatest extent ever seen in human history. Right? This is wickedness, the worst it's ever been. America, Babylon the Great. So let's ask you one more thing. Give me the new moon Sabbath for the next month based on this model. Right? So the next new moon, right here, Thursday evening to Friday evening. Thursday ends Friday evening. Sabbath would be observed continuously from the new moon on February 27th until the next new moon. Oh, they got that incorrect. No, it would be Thursday to Friday. And then I'm going to ask it when the Passover would be. It says, based on the next new moon being on Thursday, the Sabbath on Thursday to Friday, the cycle will repeat every new moon. So the next Sabbath will fall after the next new moon on March 29, 2025. Let's ask it, when would the Passover be with this model of new moon marks new month? The new moon of Nisan, the start of the first month of the Hebrew year in 2025, will be on Wednesday, March 26. 15th of Nisan. Let's see, what are we at right now? Let's see. I'm gonna have to just do this research by myself, but I'll leave the video on that. The new moon marks the Sabbath, and they're synonymous. Hopefully this is edifying. With down to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahushua Ba'Hashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors to the other bishops and apostles of the great millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to you, like Shalom.